Good, man. I'm just looking through your Instagram feed. Did you end up moving up to Phoenix?
Yeah, I'm about 75% moved. My truck's still back in Tucson, but wait until I get a job lined up till I move all the rest of the stuff up.
Gotcha. Is that going to be permanent?
The Mesa move?
Yeah.
Yeah. So far, that's what it looks like. Unless I get BP and end up having to move maybe over a little bit closer to Casa Grande. Who knows where life will take me, but right now I'm kind of hoping it will be permanent a little bit because I'm a little bit closer to elk country, so I can start learning them and start learning all the essential units.
Cool. You graduated from U of A, and what's your degree in, and what do you look, as far as a job, what are you looking to do?
My degree is in criminal justice and public management and policy, and I'm wanting to get into federal law enforcement. But I graduated, and I got down to the end of the processes for all these different agencies, CBP, different local agencies too, like some of the Mesa police up here. And I got down to the medical test, and I didn't pass the natural vision portion of the test. And so, I went to go, I thought I was going to go look into getting LASIK surgery, but I wasn't a candidate. So the only alternative I had was ICL, so I just got that last Monday. So I'm recovering from that right now.
I saw a picture of you with kind of
goggles
not
on,
blinders, but goggles, that just to protect your eye.
Yeah, protect it from getting bumped or me rubbing them.
Have you had issues at all with your vision? I mean, did you know that your vision was not perfect?
No, I mean, I knew I had bad vision, but you go to the doctor, because I've had bad eyesight since I was little. Once you get a prescription, every time you go, they pretty much they check your prescription. Then I've been wearing contacts for about a decade, so I'm usually, as soon as I wake up, I put my contacts in, and as soon as I go to bed, I take them out. So every year I go to get my prescription changed. They don't test you to see, they don't give you a scale like, your vision's 20, 100, 20, 40. They just change your prescription and you get your new contacts. And so I've been just kind of living like that for over a decade now. So I never actually had my vision tested to see how bad it was. And I got to that BP medical exam, and it was real bad. My natural vision, on a good day, was 2400 in each eye. So, I mean, my contacts were doing wonders for me because I could see pretty good. But, naturally, I was pretty much blind as a bat.
So this surgery, will it actually, is the goal that it improves your vision naturally? I mean, you won't have to have contacts? Yeah, it's a more of a permanent fix. So the whole thing with law enforcement, why they want you to have that natural vision at a certain level is in case you get into a fight and your contact gets knocked out or your glasses get knocked off. They want you to be able to see so you can do your job. They basically, with ICL, it stands for implantable contact lens. So they go in with a scalpel and cut a slit in the side of your eye, and then they have a needle. And inside the needle, they have the column or lens kind of wrapped up. And so they stick the needle in there, and then they'll push it out, and it kind of unfolds in your eye, and then they place it underneath the iris, the colored part of your eye. So it's pretty permanent, and the slit's small enough to where they don't require any suturing on it. So I'm just in the phase right now where it's recovering. My anesthesia wore off really quick, so by the time they got to my left eye, I was up. So that wasn't fun, and I'm right now my vision in my right eye. Were you able to tell them that you could feel it?
Yeah, and they tried that. The surgery is real quick. It's about 20 minutes to do each eye, 20 minutes total. So they were going on, they had finished the right, and then when they were sticking the needle in on the left, that's when I could really feel what they were doing. And I told them, and they started to administer, the anesthesiologist started to try to administer more drugs to me. But they were done about before the drugs could even kick in. So
Jeez,
I was out of it afterward. But yeah, I was gripping the side of the bed pretty hard. But I don't know if it's because of that, but my left eye is taking a long time to me it seems like it's a long time to recover. I went in for my one-day post-op, and they said I was doing well above average for recovery, and my right eye then was about 20/20, and my left eye was 20/50, and normally they say people a day after surgery, they're 20/60 or 20/70 after surgery, the day after. Mm-hmm. And so it's all swelling. So I'm like, my left eye is blurry, but it's due to swelling in the eye. But right now, my right eye is about 20/15. It feels like, and then my left eye should be 20/15. So super sharp when it heals up. So I'm excited. I'll be glad when I can go in the backcountry and not have to worry about contacts.
Yeah, I'll bet that's something that's kind of plagued you your whole life of having to deal with. Just not real convenient for sure.
Yeah, and there's been times when I've been on stalks and my contacts bother me, or getting ready to shoot and my eyes are watering. So I'm really excited for it. Different to actually be kind of like a normal person now.
Well, that's awesome. I look forward to having you on the podcast today. I guess we'll just go right into it. Guys, you've been listening to Eric Forrest talk about his eye surgery, and Eric, that's awesome. I'm glad that for one, congratulations on graduating. That's an awesome accomplishment. And number two, it sounds like you've moved up to Phoenix almost, and it sounds like you're pretty excited to kind of learn some new country up there. Having lived in Tucson and traipsed around those hills all around Tucson for so long, is there a level of excitement from you from a standpoint of just kind of the unknown and new country that can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a huge level of excitement because I've always been that guy that when you hike over the hill, you look at the next hill, next ridge, and you want to go over that ridge to see what's over there, and then the next ridge, and so you're kind of on this unending cycle. And so I feel like it's going to be incredible to actually get into some units I've never stepped foot in and see what they're all about. I did get a little bit of an introduction. I got a 22 ham tag in February because I knew that was going to force me to step foot in the unit and start kind of learning it. And two, with a javelina tag, I'm not too worried about tagging out. So I looked at it as an opportunity to go in there and really just put some boots on the ground. And man, I'll tell you, Jay, it's a lot different than down south. There's a little bit of a learning curve for me, I can see, for the central units and how the vegetation is, the deer numbers, hunting pressure, all the terrain. So I'm excited to gain a lot of knowledge. That's
cool. You're always kind of a guy that seems, from my outside view, looking in, third party view, you always seem to take kind of a more intellectual approach than others do, which I think is intriguing to a lot of people. And then I think you parlay that with the success that you've had of shooting some really nice bucks and tracking some really nice bucks and kind of keeping your eye on them. It's always cool to have you on the podcast because while you are a young guy, the experience level that you have is far greater than most out there, even guys that are 50, 60 years old. In your initial, and we'll get into today, we're going to talk about the deer applications coming up and the June 11th deadline, what have you, and I want to pick your brain on some stuff. But okay. In drawing that ham tag and kind of just saying, okay, let's dive into the unit. Speaking of 22, one of the Central Arizona units is known for good Coues deer. Has obviously some desert muleys, has some higher country too up in the pines. There's some burned areas, manzanita. It kind of has, you picked a unit that kind of has everything. Initially, what jumped out at you as far as, if you compare it directly to, say, one of the units that you really like Unit 33, from my perspective, one thing that I would think that you would maybe encounter is Unit 33, from the very bottom to the very top, you can find Coues deer. And from my perspective, Unit 22 is a little more pockety, not so widespread of just, Coues deer are going to be, from the very bottom to the very top. Although they are, to me, they seem a little bit more pockety in 22 than, say, a unit like, in your backyard that you love so much, like a 33. Just curious your thoughts on what you encountered. And maybe you didn't have enough time to spend, but what did you encounter out there?
Well, yeah, exactly, Jay. That was one of the biggest oh wow moments for me personally when I went into 22, because I was limited. I just had my car, so I was mainly using 87 to get around the unit and then hiking in to look for javelina. And I hiked, I put boots on the ground and hiked real deep into some spots that looked pretty much akin to 33, like real bouldery stuff, lots of creeks flowing. To me, looked like great feed. It looked like phenomenal country. And, I would hike in real early in the morning and see a little bit of deer sign here and there. And I thought, when I sat down to glass, I hiked to just a fantastic vantage point where I could look at, more country than you could cover in a day, really. And sat there and I just saw 2 Coues deer does, and that was it. And man, it it was dumbfounding me, because I'm like, I should be seeing more animals than I am, and this country looks amazing. Why the heck aren't there any more animals? And so I started to walk down into those basins along those creeks and saw, more javelina sign than deer sign, and that kind of blew me away, because in that type of country down south, it'd be loaded with deer sign. And up in 22, there wasn't really much. And throughout my hunt, I did start to see kind of just, when I did find deer, there were, like you said, little tiny pockets, little pockets of mule deer herds, little pockets of Coues deer. And I ended up only seeing 1 Coues deer buck the whole hunt. And I saw him several times in a row where I was hunting javelina. And he was about 100-inch 3x3, so he wasn't too shabby. But, man, just seeing that be the only buck, and I hunted pretty much the whole ham hunt, it blew me away that I didn't see as much deer as I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean, and as you learn it more and, you dive into some more of the central Arizona units, when you start finding those pockets, you'll get dialed in really, really quick. But it is always interesting, I think, to take someone that is, your country down where you've grown up your whole life so well, all the different pockets. And granted, it's huge country and you're always learning new country. It is fun for me to go into new stuff and just try and challenge yourself to be like, all right, I've done really well in areas that I know. Let's put my skills to the test, and it won't take you long at all to figure things out. And I've got full confidence that you'll have a ball.
Thank you.
We could talk about all kinds of things. One of the things that is really cool about what you do is you seem to, from my perspective, and I've had you on the podcast before, you seem to kind of focus on deer. Granted, if you find a big giant deer, great. You don't seem to be super score oriented. You seem to be more maturity, older bucks, mature bucks, and even bucks that have character, or bucks that you're like, hey, I've got some history with this buck. I'm gonna try and focus on this buck, where you might know of a bigger buck, but hey, this buck, I've got a lot of pictures of this one and I've been chasing them around. And so I love following your Instagram feed and actually reading, and then seeing the level of pictures and like, hey, I've been watching this buck for 4 years, da-da-da-da-da. And one of those bucks that's pretty cool, I think you have some history with, not only the buck we can talk about the buck you shot, I believe, last year, but also Savannah's buck.
Yeah.
Seems like you had quite a bit of history with both of those bucks, and I'll just let you kind of talk about them.
Yeah, so the whole thing with score is for me, I think we talked about this before, is I totally understand score, and I completely understand it on a guiding perspective. So I don't have anything against it. For me personally, I just don't want to be the one to put a tape on any of the deer I've killed to kind of redefine what they are. Because to me, I just like to leave it at, hey, it's a big buck, it's a mature buck. I had a heck of a time hunting them, and that's that. Because I feel like a lot of guys get wound up, especially since social media has become so prevalent. They get wound up over score, and it seems like in recent years, if it's not a 100-inch buck or better, it's not much. And to me, that's kind of a shame, because there's plenty of bucks that I've hunted in the past that weren't 100 inches that meant more to me than some other bucks that were over 100 inches. So I've always been in it for the challenge, and if a buck has that whoa factor, it makes me feel giddy inside. That's the buck I'm going to go after. But
yeah,
Savannah's buck. What was that? Sorry, go ahead.
Real fast, just to touch on that. That's not to say, like, even when you were just talking about the buck you saw in 22 and, a 3x3 that was like a 100-inch buck, I just want to be clear to kind of point out to people that it's not saying that you don't say to your buddies, hey, that buck's like a 110-inch buck, or, this buck's 100. You're more than anything just kind of giving whoever you're telling the story to just an idea. Are we talking an 80-inch buck? Are we talking a 110-inch buck? But you're not like going, I think he's 112 and 3/8, and then as soon as you shoot him, you're getting him on the ground, and you're going to see if you're right at 112 and 3/8. You're more after that deer. You have no problem like categorizing a deer. If someone says, hey, what do you think that buck would score? You say, he's 105-ish. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I may be reading too much into it, but so you're not like you're not dodging the score. It's just not part of the equation that you're too worked up about.
No, you hit it right on the nail. You hit it right on the head. That's pretty much how I look at it, and thanks for clarifying that. I always, when I see a buck, I'll classify them, 105, 110, 115, just so everybody's on the same page, right? But I don't get too worried about it when the buck hits the ground.
Yeah. Talk about Savannah's buck.
So that one, I think last time we talked, was when Tristan had just found that buck in the glass. So we had that buck on camera for 3 years, because we initially found him in 2015, and basically what we did was we went out and set salt in the camera around March when they still had their antlers. This was a new area to us at the time, and we were just going to see what kind of deer show up in the area, get an inventory check. And so we set that camera out, checked it several months later after the deer had already dropped and were starting to grow new antlers, and saw there was this real nice symmetrical, clean 3x3, about 105 type buck on camera. And I thought, oh man, that's a nice deer. Maybe we should try to see about trying to glass that deer up and hunt him. And then as history had it, we always got on different deer in the 3 years that buck was hanging around. And the next year he ended up having a drop tine. He was super cool.
How long, roughly?
That year was the first year he had a drop tine. It was probably about 3 to 4 inches, 3 to 4 inch drop tine. It wasn't super big, but it was pretty cool. And we hadn't checked the cameras before the hunt that year, because we were out chasing the other drop tine that year with her, the one she ended up killing in 2017. And so that buck that whole area got the pass in 2017 because we didn't focus on it at all. And then Tristan decides he's going to go just go out to go glass, just for the heck of it. And he goes out with Savannah and puts the binos up, and there's this buck, and he sends me a picture of it. And he didn't know it at the time. He sends a picture to me, and I'm like, dude, that's that buck, because we'd never been able to lay eyes on this deer at all. And I said, that's that drop time buck. So we go back in there really early in the morning. I find this one little hill where he had kind of gotten on, where he could kind of look into this one canyon. And so we hiked up on there. It was kind of out of the way. Real steep, nasty little hill that no one's ever got on. And we got on there, and sure as heck, right at first light, we glassed that buck up in this little pocket. Watched him feed his way up and wrap around the canyon, disappear every morning. He would, about right when the sun would hit, he would start, picking up speed and moving. And then we would eventually lose him. And we spent pretty much every bit of free time we had to go back in there and look for that buck. And we saw him every single time, except a couple times we didn't see him at all. And then one time we saw him on across the canyon on the ridge, way up on top. But for the most part, about 90% of the time, he was in the same spot. You could pretty much mark out a 50-yard by 50-yard little square area where he was going to be at first light. For whatever reason, he was always right there feeding, and then he would feed up and around and drop out of sight. And so we thought, oh man, what was that?
Eric, do you think that was a spot that he just liked? He was always there at first light. Do you think it was a spot that he just liked to bed there? He felt comfortable sleeping overnight right there, and then he would obviously wake up, feed a little bit, and then he'd start cruising to wherever he'd move midday. I mean, do you think it's a very interesting observation where you say, you glass them up, every time in the same spot? Are we talking like 4 or 5 times, or are we talking like 10 times? Like how many? Like, is it a completely repeatable pattern?
Oh, completely repeatable. Tristan and I, we spent, like I said, like all of our free time going in there. When I didn't have classes at school, I would run over there and get up on the.
So literally, like at least 10 times. 10 times? I mean,
yeah,
more than 20 times?
I would say if I was there more, it would have been more than 20 times. But
so I mean, this truly was a deer that he just felt comfortable in that spot.
Yeah, we scratched our heads because it was low in the canyon elevation. And from my experience, the bigger bucks I've always hunted in the mountains tend to hang out up higher where they can see. Mm-hmm. So it didn't make much sense to me that he started out so low in the canyon. We never glassed him up bedded. He was always feeding right at first light, no matter what the moon was. It seemed he didn't really care about that. And like I said, right when that sun would get up, and that time changed as the sun would come up a little bit later in the day. But when we first saw him, as soon as the sun would get up, he would pick up speed and get around that canyon and go off to wherever he was going off to. We could never locate a second vantage point to see where he was going successfully. And it was one of those things where we were making plans, we're strategizing where we're going to put Savannah, who was the tag holder, on opening morning for where she could kill this buck. And she had that third hunt last year, and opening day was a nasty kind of like snow kind of wintry storm deal that flowed through, and it was really cold, lots of rain, lots of snow, and a little bit of lots of rain, a little bit of snow, but lots of wind. And so that day ended up being a total shutdown with not much deer movement at all. But we were going to plan on putting her essentially right in the saddle across, and just to have that buck feed right up and her to shoot. And it didn't quite end up going like that because of the storm. But I was really worried, being that buck he had that same pattern every day, that as soon as opening morning came around, that you'd have other hunters in there and his whole pattern would be thrown off. because we did go in there during the hunts before. I told Tristan, I was like, we need to go in there during the hunts and see what happens. Yep. And Jay, the area was crawling with hunters. It was absolutely crawling. On the first hunt, it was crawling. The second hunt, we had guys all over where the buck was, all on top of the canyon, and pretty much right above where he started out his days. And, I mean, these guys, you know, a group of like 10 or so guys just walking the hills and, you know, trying to flush deer. And I told Tristan, I'm like, I hope they don't flush that buck and you know, throw rounds at them. And these guys there was one guy glassing, and he had a tripod, so I got kind of worried there. But we never, you know, never saw that buck during those times. And I worried that was going to be the case for when her hunt rolled around. I thought he was going to switch his pattern entirely, and that we weren't going to find him. We even worried that he got killed on one of those hunts, but we came back in right before her hunt on that third hunt, and he was still doing his normal thing. And that opening morning, when we didn't see him at all, I worried, you know, that same thing, that he had switched his pattern up. You know, it's getting later in the year. There's a lot of hunting pressure. And so we kind of were like, well, you know, opening morning's a bust. Didn't see a single buck to shoot at. Because she kind of wrote her tag for him. Because, you know, you have this awesome story. You shoot your very first buck is a drop tine. So your next buck, if it's a drop tine too, it's an incredible story, right? So we'd always joked about that. And so the next day came, and she's a trooper. She hunted that whole day through those bad conditions, and you know, wasn't skipping a beat. The next day she was ready to go after it again. And so we hiked back up there the next day, got up there, set up, you know, in the dark pretty much, and waited for it to get light. And it was getting light, and I had a buck in my glass, and I'm like, I got a buck, and he's right in that spot, and just trying to wait for enough light to come in for me to materialize what he has on his head. And sure as heck, it was him. And so, yeah, I told Tristan, I said, you and her get down the hill and make a run at it and try to get up on the opposite side of the canyon. And, you know, it's a gamble because there's a ton of deer around, a ton of does. You know, bumping a doe is always a risk. And so they get up there, they didn't spook any deer, but the grass is so tall that they couldn't see the deer or even set up on a shot. And he eventually, you know, being a smart, mature buck, he eventually picked them up. And this buck decides he's going to take off his normal route. So he goes up the canyon and around, and wraps around. They never got a shot. And
unreal.
So I said, I thought in my head, I'll be honest, I thought, man, this was a blown, you know, the day's kind of blown, because he wraps around this hill, Jay. You can't see back there. It's all pretty big, steep country. You could go hike back there, but you know the odds of finding that buck again are pretty slim. Right. And so him and I don't know how many other deer, like a whole group of deer, head up the canyon around, and Tristan starts heading up this ridge, kind of up where he was that one day up at the top, and he's dragging Savannah up there. They're ball busting it up there, and he finally gets up on top. And he's talking to me on the radio. I told him, he's like, you think it's worth to get up here to look? I'm like, well, you're not going to hurt anything. You get up there, you can look. You might see him come around. Who knows? And so he gets up there, and sure as heck, he spots that buck. And so he follows it, and this buck is way higher up now. They all went up and into this, some shaded junipers and kind of calmed down. And so Tristan gets Savannah, and they sneak over there. I can't remember. It was a pretty good shot. I think it was over 500 yards. But they get her set up, and she shoots him, gets him down. He falls down this is steep stuff. He falls, 100 yards. Tristan gets it all on video, and they finally make their way over it. And then I get off that little knob and hike all the way up there, and I gave them crap because I told them, you guys have put me on this hill every day, getting all lazy on this tiny little hill, and now I have to hike all the way up on the big mountain. And man, when Jack, the feelings walking up to that deer after watching him so long, on the cameras and not knowing where he lived, and then focusing on him for weeks on end. It was incredible just walking up and seeing how big he actually was, have him in my hands. It was unreal.
Did he have his drop time?
Yeah, so he had his drop time. It was weird. This past year, 2018, he still had his drop time. His frame was bigger, and his predominant side, I think it was his left side, or his right side, where he was, he had a bigger third on that side. That side was bigger, had bigger eye guards, more mass, but the drop tine was smaller. And then his G3 on that drop tine side was smaller as well. I think overall he was maybe a little bit bigger, but I kind of wonder if we had better moisture last year, what he would have actually been. Or if he was sort of regressing. He was a really old buck. But yeah, I can't help to wonder what he might have been with better moisture.
You said in your Instagram feed that that was the biggest body you'd ever seen.
Oh yeah. It was all Tristan. I had to get him hoisted up to get him all skinned out and butchered out, and it had about the darkest red meat I've ever seen on a deer.
Really?
Super good tasting. Yeah, it was like almost purple. It was crazy.
Looks like he's got a little kicker on his left G2, like a little point. Was that point always it looked like about an inch long? Was that point always there, and was it always about the same length?
No, actually, that was a development in 2018 too. So that his G2 actually kind of spayed out almost in like 3 different points. It's kind of like what it looked like it wanted to do, and his other side kind of there was a little bit of a bump where it looked like he wanted to grow another drop tine. So yeah, man, it makes me wonder what his full prime would have been, or if that was it. But yeah, he's tons of character, really unique deer.
It's I'm looking on your Instagram, and for those out there listening, Eric, it's ERIC_Forrest with 2 R's, FORREST. There's a picture of you and Savannah and Tristan with the buck, and then before that, there's a velvet picture of them. Really cool. But man, that in the velvet photo, that body looks huge when he's standing there on the hoof. He looks like, big body deer. Those eye guards are pretty awesome as well. And then I like how he's kind of looks like out on the, like 3 or 4 inches out from the tip of his main beam, it's all bladed, kind of heavy there.
Yeah, he's a super cool buck. We're all drooling over him when we walked up to him. We were probably just standing there just admiring him for about 30 minutes before we actually even got around to pictures.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Savannah is a lucky girl. I think she has an idea of how fortunate she is, doesn't she?
Yeah, she has an idea too of how hard it is, because man, that was some tough hiking, and she definitely put the work in for sure.
Good for her. I want to take just a quick second here to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com. My friend Cody Nelson is the optics manager at GoHunt.com, and if you guys want to help support this podcast and you're looking for optics, you're looking for binos, tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, anything to do with optics, give him a call, give him the business, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. That's Cody Nelson, the optics manager at Go Hunt Gear Shop, GoHunt.com. I appreciate you guys doing that. I also want to thank KUIU. That's KUIU, KUIU Ultralight Hunting. You can find out more about KUIU. That's the clothing and the gear that I wear on all my hunts. You can find out more at kuiu.com. That's KUIU.com. Also want to thank Canyon Coolers. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount at canyoncoolers.com. Phonescope.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount. And onxmaps.com. If you use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 20% discount there at OnX Maps. OnX Maps I use on all my hunts. I've been using it actually up here fishing in Colorado, trying to determine where private property and public ground is. There's also a great measuring distance feature. There's a breadcrumb feature so you can kind of track where you're going. Coming back in the dark, it's nice to follow a track. Go to onxmaps.com, use the JScott19 promo code, you're going to get a 20% discount. So, Eric, she has shot a couple of beautiful bucks, speaking of Savannah, and it's pretty neat that they got that done, and you were able to hike up there, and you guys just basically reveled in, you know, the memories of trail cameras and spending so much time. It is fun, though, wouldn't you agree, that if you're able to hunt one animal, and basically spend your season thinking about that animal, thinking about what he's doing. I mean, I always tease with my buddies, like, whatever animal we're after, whether it's elk season or what, you know, like, what is he doing right now? And, you know, there's all the responses coming back. Oh, he's sleeping. Oh, he's licking his balls. Oh, he's, you know, whatever. But it's just, it's fun to kind of have that one animal that, you know, it's always in the back of your mind, and you're always thinking about, and then to be able to go on opening day and have just rough weather, and, you know, you don't even know, you know, like, is the buck still alive? You know, did a lion get him? I mean, and I do have one question for you. Well, I have a bunch, but one that I want to hit on is, in those circumstances when you've had so much experience watching a certain animal, and you've got hunters all around you, your mind plays evil tricks on you and says, oh, that buck's in the back of a truck going to Ohio right now. He's dead. Someone from Illinois got him. Boom, he's gone. What do you do from a mental standpoint of, like, until I know otherwise, you know, we're going to focus on this buck, and, you know, until I can prove that he's not there? Or how do you handle that? Because you are hunting public ground, and you are looking at bucks that, you know, have a really good chance with, you know, she had the third hunt, had a really good chance the archery season and the first two rifle seasons that someone's going to stumble into them. How do you handle that?
Yeah, exactly. So from my own experience, you know, I've had those thoughts over the years and seen bucks, you know, very rarely has a buck I've been watching actually been killed, or a lion gets it. So for me, I have like a natural sense of, you know, at ease with these older mature bucks, because, you know, they're big, they're old, they're there because they know what they're doing, and I try to stay confident in that. But Tristan, you know, he's a lot newer into hunting than I am, so I could see him. He was getting a little worried about all the hunters there. She was getting a little bit worried about all the hunters there, and I told him, I said, look, think about all the bucks we have on trail cam, how all these old bucks, they show up year after year. We haven't had a single one go missing yet. Every year after year, they show back up, so no one's killing them. The cats aren't killing them. They're smart. They're sticking around. You know, this buck's no different. He's going to be sticking around until we get in on him. And the thing with her buck is he was really smart in where he decided to stay, because you could not see that buck unless you were on that little tiny hill that we were on. And this hill was so out of the way, Jade. I'm a pretty good judge of sign, and no one's ever, you know, broken through all the, you know, the shrubs to get up there and glass off of it. It was a pretty much virgin hill, and that was the only place you could see right into the small little pocket he was in starting out in the morning. That was a good enough distance away where you weren't spooking him. And I think that's the reason why that buck survived year after year, is because all these guys are crawling on the hill he's on. So all that buck has to do is slip up that canyon and out. like he tried to do on Savannah and Tristan that day. And the only reason they ended up killing him is because both of them were persistent in going up that hill and keeping after that buck and seeing him where he did slip out up higher, and that's how they killed him.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that, I mean, you know, heavily pressured units, they're still big deer, old deer, mature deer. I mean, you just made a perfect case for why bucks get big. And it's something to think about for those people that are, you know, thinking about applying for different units and how they're going to strategize and, you know, what tactics they're going to use for their hunt. But sometimes trying to figure out from a map and sometimes trying to figure out from an aerial, you know, Google Earth, and sometimes on the ground, where are these pockets that people aren't looking? And I think that's a perfect example of,
exactly,
you know, the buck was on the hill that the people were on rather than across. They're probably looking over the top of them. They're probably not looking at where he was. And so, you know, when trying to find big mature bucks, I mean, go places where people don't go. Go glass off the hard spots that are hard to get to and look at it from a different perspective and different angle. And just like Eric's saying, you know, he watched that buck over and over and over. I mean, it's not the only buck that is in a spot like that, Eric. I firmly believe that,
exactly,
you know, those mature bucks, they figure out a way to stay alive, and those are the bucks that, you know, if you're really after a mature buck, a big buck, I mean, that's what you've got to do. You've got to find those pockets where people aren't looking and where it allows those deer to get old and to get big. Really cool story. I do, with the application season, and we'll have to talk about your buck another time, but with the application season coming up, obviously you know a handful of the units in southern Arizona, and you're going to be a quick learner on some of the central Arizona units. I just wanted to basically get your thoughts before we dive in, and I'm just going to ask you, we're going to shotgun through some units, and feel free to say know nothing about it, have no idea, or if you say, oh, it's, you know, thick or high density, low density, lots of hunters, you know, might have a chance for a big one, whatever. But before we get to that, the 4-season structure, the way that most of these units and a lot of them in southern Arizona are structured, they're structured October 25th to October 31st, then November 8th to the 14th, then the 29th to the 8th, and then December 13th to the 31st. The first question I would ask you before we start talking specific units are, out of those 4 hunts, in your opinion, someone that has literally chased Coues deer since you were in diapers, speaking to the people that are out there applying for the draw, out of those 4 season structures, which one do you think is the best chance to kill consistently the biggest buck, or the most mature, you know, big gnarly buck, like what you chase?
So I'm kind of split on that one. I feel like if you're doing your homework, like a lot of guys are, you know, like, you know, Devin Beck, yeah, I could rattle off a list of guys that take advantage of that first hunt, because they do their homework, they watch a buck, well, you know, for months before a season, and then they go in there opening day and they have that buck patterned down, and they shoot him, and they have, you know, first go at that buck before everybody comes in and you know, tramples the area around. But I'm kind of split on that because, you know, with Savannah's buck, I learned that even on the first hunt, it didn't matter if it was the first hunt, the second hunt, or, you know, the third hunt. Ultimately, we had that buck patterned down enough to where we could be successful in killing him. I feel like if you're hunting a really pressured unit where bucks do tend to get killed like that, that first hunt might be your best bet, especially this year with the new moon on that first hunt. But I've always been a fan for that third hunt because it's fairly easy to draw on most units, and it gives you a lot of time to hunt. And I think I think the amount of days you have to hunt are going to make you are going to end up making you more successful than having the first go, because on that first hunt, you've got just as many guys out there as you do on the third hunt.
And when you say third hunt, do you mean the December hunt, or do you mean that third, the kind of that November 29th to December 8th hunt?
That 2 weekend long.
Okay.
Yeah, for like the southern units. I just started getting into looking up the regs, and the hunt structures for these central units. It doesn't seem like it's the same as the southern units. You have your first hunt, your second hunt, and then you have that third hunt that's 2 weekend long.
Right.
And that tag's very easy to draw.
So from a draw perspective, you like the chance that you can get that tag. You also like the chance that you have longer period of time. And from what I hear you saying is a lot of the bucks that you chase, you're not as concerned about someone shooting them in October or the second hunt, as long as you can pattern them good enough and you know that you're kind of looking for odd, out of the way places. You're more trying to get as much time so that you have more hunting time, whereas the first hunt, that October, 25th through the 31st, it's a very short window of time. You would rather have 2 weekends and 9 days to hunt that buck that you've patterned. What about does typically a little bit cooler temperatures on that third hunt play into your equation too? Do you feel like you have those bucks on their feet a little bit longer, or no?
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that, hot mornings the bucks tend to simmer down a little bit faster in the morning. Activity in the past, I don't know if it'll be different this year, but I know last year that first hunt in October was pretty hot. And for one, that's not the most enjoyable thing for, as a person to go hunt. So that's why I've always opted for those later hunts. It's a little bit cooler. It's more comfortable to hunt, and you have more of a chance of a buck getting up and moving around. A little bit longer in the day, giving you a better chance to get a glimpse of them.
Yeah, good stuff. Let me rapid fire through some of these units. And again, if you don't have any experience or really have no comment, you can just say, no comment, no experience, move on. And anything that jumps out at you. And I'm going to actually take these units backwards. I'm going to start with 36C, and we're going to, start there and move, go to smaller numbers from there. But let's start with 36C.
Lots of deer. I haven't hunted it too much recently, but I've seen big bucks in that unit. Lots of deer, though.
36B.
36B?
Yeah.
Or did you say C?
No, 36B as in boy.
Yeah. Again, lots of deer. Pretty much all the 36s have tons of deer and pretty good potential for some big bucks if you can get away from the popular areas and kind of look down low.
36A.
Same thing, lots of deer. Good potential if you know where to look, get away from a lot of people. Unit gets hit hard, lots of tags. Best bet is to get up high and look down low.
35B as in boy.
Good unit, lots of areas can be thick, lots of popular areas, but plenty of area to get in deep and hike. Seems to be a little bit lower deer density, at least glassing, but when you do see a buck in 36B, it's usually a pretty mature one. 35B, my bad.
Yep, 35A.
Really good unit, again, like 35Bs. Lots of areas that can be thick, lots of open areas, lots of open hillsides you can find at 35A. Lots of deer, pretty good bucks in that unit too.
34B.
It's a good unit. I've seen some good bucks in that unit. To me, there's a somewhat little bit of an access issue with 34B, a lot of private property. But if you can get in, hike in and get around that private property, there's some pretty good bucks in that unit.
34A.
Good unit. Seems like they've been hitting it with lots of tags year after year, but there's a lot of deer in that unit. Some good bucks too.
Gosh, to me, Eric, that's one unit. This is just me putting my why can't we do this hat on? But man, it seems like, the 675, 675, 600, and then 100 on the late hunt. Man, if we could just cut those numbers in half, 34A would produce some phenomenal deer. I mean, it still does, but it seems like out of all those units, it just gets absolutely pounded.
Yeah, the age class of deer in 34A is in a lot of spots, especially, Gardner Canyon, Box Canyon, that whole area, Sawmill, the age class of deer in there, it's incredibly hard to find an actual mature deer that has the opportunity to grow up to be pretty good. That's my only kick on 34A.
Unit 33.
Very good unit. Again, just like 34A, it seems to be hit up on the rifle hunts pretty hard, but I think the terrain of 33 kind of keeps a lot of people out of the far corners, and if you can find a good far corner to get away from people, you can find a really, really big buck.
32.
I have yet to step foot in 32, but I've been looking at it on the maps.
The Galeros and the Winchesters in 32, I've spent quite a bit of time. It's a rough place, and it's a place I think, if you can get away, like most of these units, you can get away from some of the popular areas, you have a chance to find a pretty good buck. Okay, 31.
Again, looking at it on the maps, I haven't quite got there yet.
Okay, how about any experience in 30A or 30B?
No.
How about the Chiricahuas 29?
I've heard a lot of good things about the Chiricahuas and had opportunities to go there on private land that I wish I would have taken advantage of in the past. But from what I've heard, it's huge bucks in that unit. But I've heard there's a huge issue with with access because of all the private land.
Yeah, I think that burn in there has probably done those deer some good. And then, it goes into 27 and then the Central Arizona units, the 24s and 23s and 22s, 21s and 6As. You haven't had a chance to really hit up yet. That's awesome to be able to shed some light on some of those units. And, it's so, do you feel like you're almost opening a new chapter in your life of, okay, now you've been working so hard, working a job and working yourself through school. Now you've graduated. I guess the first question would be, do you feel like a new chapter is opening in your life where, there's quite a bit unknown coming, and how, as a young man, how are you kind of embracing that unknown?
Oh, for sure. I do feel like it's almost a new book entirely. I love adversity. I love challenges because it's an opportunity to grow, and I always seek out, difficulties because I've always looked at them as ways to grow myself, and I welcome them. So being up here and not really knowing much about the units up here is very intriguing to me. I see that there's a learning curve. Just with that javelina hunt alone, there was a learning curve to that compared to hunting javelina down home. And, I've been kind of just looking at the guys that are successful up here, like the ground pounders, James Dudley, all those guys, and having stepped foot in 22 and seeing how difficult it is, or how difficult it can be, and the fact that those dudes are killing it, I can tell there's a lot to be learned, and so I'm really excited to start getting my lessons, really.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fun to watch how you progress, and there's always excitement to checking out new country, and I would encourage you, don't hesitate to continue to overlook some of the country that you've run around as a kid, and learn new areas, learn new units, but don't give up on the units that you love so much. But that's the cool thing about being young and having the experience level, I think, that you do, is that you can take your skills, and I probably I'm just reading into it. I feel like I know you well enough to say that you're almost taking it on as a challenge to be like, yeah, I know I have the skills. I'm going to take it into some new units and let's just have fun with it. I think one of the cool things is, some of these units that are in central Arizona that people know and it's kind of their backyard, it'd be similar if they were coming into your backyard. You may come in with a fresh eye, and you may come in with a fresh perspective to be like, that mountain range or, that set of hills looks really good, where someone might drive by it all the time and be like, nah, there's nothing there. And then here you come with a fresh perspective to be like, I'm going to see if, this looks good to my eye. It looks similar to something I've hunted back home. Let's see what we can find. And boom, you might find, all of a sudden you find a great buck. So, sometimes a fresh perspective in a new unit can produce good things. You mentioned elk too. You were excited about learning some of the elk units. Have you drawn an elk tag this year?
No, I just due to not being certain where I'm going to land work, I decided just to do the bonus points and start banking up my points to draw a good tag. But man, I've gotten lucky on elk in the past. My dad knows elk really well, and I've benefited off of that when I was a kid because he would put me in on elk and I'd be done pretty quick. So I never really got the chance to really first-handedly learn elk. So I went up there not too long ago just to shed hunt and just to get out there, and man, it's really cool. That's another thing for me that there's a huge learning curve that I got to start hiking up with elk.
Well, that's cool. It's always nice to have a kind of a new animal, a new passion to kind of chase. Yeah. I want to finish with the podcast here, talk a little bit about your archery setup. I know you're really into archery, and just curious if you're one of those guys that, is constantly getting new bows, or are you one of those guys that, finds one and shoots it for 2, 3, 4 years and, kind of sticks with what you know and what you like, or are you one of those guys that's constantly, trying new bows and new things and what have you?
So, I started shooting for PSC, like on their staff when I was about around 16. So they were giving me a bow about every year, to shoot with. Whatever new products they had, new line of bows, they would have me shoot, and then I'd pick one and I'd shoot with that for the year. But lately I've stuck to the bows that I've really loved off the PSC line. So I've been shooting my PSC Evolve, my Evolve 34, and that thing is a tack driver for me. Again, everybody's different with the bows they shoot, but that bow, it's been pretty deadly for me. Do you want me to describe my setup for it?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a 31 and a half draw, I believe, and I'm shooting 150 grain Swacker 3-inch cut.
That's your dad's broadhead, right?
Yeah. That's a nasty broadhead. And my arrows are about 450 grains right now. I think I'm pulling around 70 pounds right now. I have one of my dad's old sights on there, a Sonoran long range sight that unfortunately he doesn't make anymore, but it's a good sight. That's about it for my setup. 2-piece quiver. Pretty simple. I try to keep it simple. I'm one of those guys that shoots a whisker biscuit still, and I get a lot of crap for it. But to me, there's nothing on it to break because there's nothing mechanical about it. So I really like that. And I've killed out at a distance with it, so it's worked for me. Anything else?
Yeah. I think one of the things, I've used the whisker biscuit before, one of the things I really liked about it is stalking. I mean, you can basically have an arrow knocked and crawl and, have it upside down, any which way and, crawling through the brush, and it's just right there. Your arrow never falls. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, and I've had ripcord drop away rest break on me at one of the worst times ever. So that's why I stick with the whisker biscuit.
Well, that's really cool. Well, I'm excited for you, buddy. I'm happy that you're had a successful surgery, and I'll look for you to land somewhere here successfully here soon. And just excited to watch your progress. And always appreciate you coming on the podcast, and always appreciate for a young guy, such a mature approach. You've always had it. I've been following you a long time, so it's cool to see, the excitement level that you have, but also the maturity level that you have with the respect you have for the animals you hunt. And so it's really cool. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Wish you the best of success in the upcoming draws, and thanks for giving us a few stories and shedding a little bit of light on things. And I'll see you down the road, okay?
All right, thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all the kind words. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no sweat. And I'm going to link up Eric's Instagram page in the show notes, so I encourage you guys to, if you don't follow him, again, it's Eric_Forrest with 2 R's. Forrest has 2 R's. And I'm also going to link it up in the show notes. So, Eric, God bless. I'll catch you later.
Thank you. Catch you later, Jay.